Hi, everybody. Welcome to week 7 in this micro class. I'm talking this tonight. I'm going to talk about last week and a little bit of this week. This week's is labor. We do a little bit of pivot after externalities last week. So we'll talk a little bit of rehash that idea, wrap some of that up, and talk about labor. Good thing about this topic, which I like when I teach, very, very current. This idea about what labor is, supply and demand of labor, probably on a macro topic, how it affects the Federal Reserve policies, about what they do with interest rates, and sort of talk about some of the bells and whistles of labor, get us thinking again a little bit more about an industry with suppliers and demanders of labor and types of things that drive decisions in those. So first of all, talk about externalities. Really important module. Kind of one of those topics in economics that I hope a lot of you who haven't necessarily taken economics before gets you thinking a little bit about where policies can have spin-offs, things that result as a result of decisions. Lots and lots of public decisions result in ramifications that politicians and decision makers don't necessarily. Usually they have thought about this, but they don't. It's gray. It's not always borne out by statistics. We're going to talk about some things that are, but some examples of externalities. There's public externalities. Positive externalities, negative externalities. Examples of public externalities include public transit. So the ability to ride on a bus for next to nothing and get to wherever you want. Publicly, you have street lights, you have a police department. You don't always pay the right amount for the value that you get. That's a key phrase. You don't always pay the amount for what you get, and that works both ways. So on a positive side, public goods are a lot of positive externalities. It could be safety, right? The book talks about the national defense, right? The idea that we're safe from invaders because we have a defense department that protects us from invading our country, right? Not things that you wake up in the middle of the night you think about. So again, lots of public externalities that are kind of simple to understand. There's negative externalities that are a little bit easier as well to think about, like pollution, right? Pollution's not really that complicated, but I didn't decide to create something and pollute the atmosphere, and yet I'm affected by it, right? Any business that creates a byproduct of it that affects me, that's an externality. It's a negative externality, right? I didn't get any benefit out of this directly, but yet here I am breathing in toxic smoke, right? For example. So those are negatives. Where things get really interesting is a topic of dissension and back and forth. Example is this idea of the Keystone. Keystone is a gas line in Canada, a proposed gas line that would move huge amounts of gas reserves from Canada down through the United States, down to the bottom, to be shipped, some to be redistributed within the United States, but some to be shipped out of, I suppose, Louisiana. The pipeline needs to go right down through the heart of the United States. And so the benefits don't easily translate into everyone's vocabulary. We don't really get exactly how that would help us. We definitely know the negatives because this pipeline might go through your neighborhood. It might go through some area, something called eminent domain. So here again is that idea. I might not get direct benefits of that. However, it seems like I'm getting direct negative things of it. Some direct benefits, indirect benefits of a Keystone line is oil prices might be cheaper, right? If there's a more effective, more efficient distribution of natural gas, might lower prices for sure, and might lead to lower prices for all Americans. However, the specific people that are impacted by these lines to go through the United States, um, they're upset about it. So there's a phrase called NIMBY, not in my backyard, that kind of encapsulates a lot of this issue. So very political issue, and it goes back and forth between Democrats and Republicans. So right now, I think the Keystone's probably going to be reopened, right, with the policy that we have right here, or the administration that we have. So again, there's net positive externalities, negative ones. We talked about example driving to work. So again, patents are examples of government policies that may affect a few. For example, if because there's a patent office and I go and I invent something, I'm protected by this patent. That may impact a small group of people who are also working on something, but I got there first. However, the good outweighs the bad. That if there's a patent, it allows future creators, future scientists, researchers to have incentives to come up with certain things. Those things they create and come up with will be better for mass society. So again, it's a small versus big. And that's the whole idea of these externalities. Lots of examples, but definitely patents, trademarks, that type of thing. So this week we kind of pivot and we talk about labor. Great topic for us to be covering right now. Lots and lots of stuff in the news about labor. Federal Reserve has a dual mandate. One of their things they need to focus on is employment. They want to find the magic amount of employment for a healthy economy. At the same time, employment happens to be a driver of inflation. So if we have a full employment, everybody in the United States that wants a job has a job, they're all getting paid lots of money, there's a very good likelihood that everybody having a lot of money and feeling good about the economy sentiment means they'll spend more. And then the idea of inflation rises up. And that's a second mandate the Fed has to worry about. So inflation seems to be moving up very slowly, not as much high as everyone thought. And in the employment market, the labor market, seems to have hit a bit of a wall. And companies aren't hiring as much. They're not necessarily laying off. Employment numbers are pretty steady. Unemployment numbers are pretty steady. That being said, that sort of mandate seems to be okay with the Fed, but they're a little worried that if we see inflation starting to push up a little bit, lowering rates, which is a very good possibility, was off the table. Now it's back on the table. The next week or two is probably going to happen. So just want to highlight sort of the macro policy stuff resulting from where we are with our labor markets. So a couple highlights of labor markets. Essentially labor, when we talk about supply and demand, how many people are working, how many people are there, and how many jobs are there, right? So we have people and we have jobs. How many people are there sort of impacts how many people are looking for jobs. And when I say how many people, we always know how many people there are. They're not always looking for jobs. And an example why it may impact some of you in this class. The idea that I got a fork in the road and I can work full time, but then college is going to be really hard, or I could go to college full time and work part time and sort of push the full time part out with the idea that college is going to give me a better job. That's one driver of when I say people that want to work 40 hours, right? That's one of the drivers in the sort of the supply part of supply and demand of labor. On the other side are those people, those entities called companies. Right now, those companies are showing they're not really hiring a lot of people because they're very nervous about the economy. So the intersection of labor, the supply of labor, the demand for labor, is called the equilibrium point of the magic point, right? How many people will be hired? How many people should be looking? Really a loaded idea when we talk about the policies around it. Again, back to sentiment. Companies are very nervous about the next months ahead of time. Tariffs are impacting them quite a bit. We're coming off a pretty good benefits for recent hires in the last 6, 7, 8 months. People coming out of college have been hired because there was sort of a disconnect a little bit about demand for labor. There was a lot of jobs to be filled. They got filled at pretty high levels. That being said, suddenly the companies have put the brakes on hiring. And so right now, people getting into college are going to have a harder time. I say right now, like next couple of months. Another driver, another factor is we're hearing more and more. I don't know if it's true. I don't know what'll happen. Is this thing called AI, right? And this idea that AI, the technology itself, the ability to save companies money is going to lower employment possibilities for entry-level college graduates. We'll see. It seems like this is a deja vu. Seems like I heard this from in the 90s when the internet came out. It definitely was a shakeup a little bit, but I'm not sure there was a calamity in the labor markets. Maybe AI will be like that, but I don't know how soon or bad, how quickly that'll happen. So 3 types of, excuse me, 3 types of laborers are the blue collars, white collars, and pink collars. A new addition, newer than me when I studied economics and way back when. Blue collar is the idea was people that wear uniforms when they work. So a plumber in a union, someone on an assembly line, a lot of times they're wearing an outfit that's a color, and it could be blue and could be a blue collar. That's that idea. A lot of times you're in a union, right, for blue collars. I'm not going to sit here and say better or worse, whatever. It's just a different kind of job, different kind of training, especially. Maybe an apprenticeship, maybe some kind of training program to become a plumber or a tradesman or somebody like that. Construction person as well. A white collar is someone that generally wears a white shirt. Who knows nowadays with fashion, but someone that's doing different type of office jobs, more highly educated, formally educated, not necessarily an internship or something. That white collar person may not be able to operate a screwdriver, but they know how to fix up a balance sheet or that type of stuff. So that's the sort of two of those labor categories. Lots of things define what drives them. Lots of things define about capabilities and upside, etc. A third one is called pink. Pink is a lot more healthcare. This category had to be brought in because, I mean, today my mom is 82, just went into a nursing home. Pink are folks that are taking care of her. They're not necessarily professionals. Maybe a therapist is a nurse. Maybe a nurse is. Maybe a director of the place is one, but most of the people that are working there fall into this pink collar, and because of the demographics of baby boomers, 1964 and after, you have a big spike of people that need folks. They need more pink collars. So there's a more of an opportunity for pink collar people for jobs because there's more customers, right? There's a larger segment of our community that are 63, 4, 5, 67, 68. There's a bigger percentage of those. Oh, by the way, they have a lot of money, really big amount of money. So that pink collar group has been introduced into sectors. When you're talking about labor, the pink collar part is something to be conscious of. So I wanted to say, one of the problems in the last couple of years, there's a lot of research that showed that wages, i.e. wages, compensation that people are receiving from working, right? A big driver of supply and a big driver of demand, was not keeping up. That employers had the upper hand. They're doing very well. Corporate, Fortune 500 companies are doing quite well. Profitability. They weren't necessarily passing on those wage gains to employees. It's an advertisement for unions, I would say, perhaps. But again, for white collar people, doesn't exist. So what I would say, what I've seen in the last 2 years, statistically, is white collar folks with bachelors and masters, they have been able to sort of stick it to corporate America and get their jobs, get the money that they want, versus previous 10 years, the corporate America had an upper hand. So depending on where you sit, that could be good, that could be bad. Not good if you're corporate America, because now your profit lines are going to shrink a little bit. Really good for workers coming out, really good for workers in general. All that being said, a lot of things that resulted as well with labor, I would say, is there's a number of intangible benefits that I observe that have occurred. One is benefits in working that didn't exist as much maybe 10 years ago. Work from home, for example. That seems to be a huge benefit, a huge situation. I don't even know if employees even call it a benefit. It's almost expected that more and more Americans, more and more workers have some part of their work is working from home. Like I say, I don't even know if that's called a benefit anymore. It's almost expected. But that's change, right? That's an intangible thought. Now could be a win-win for corporate America, because maybe you don't need as many desks at work. Maybe you don't need as many help desk people because there's not many people in the office. Again, maybe you need less office space at $50 a square foot. So that's been a big change. Also more subtle with schedules. More half-day Fridays, more laid back. Again, some of these things may have been a reaction to workers saying, COVID happened, right? So COVID, here's my switch. COVID changed things with labor quite a bit. Lots of people with COVID, baby boomers, for example. So baby boomers, someone born in 64 or after, makes up a huge percentage of our labor force. Huge percentage of all of our Americans are baby boomers. They got a lot of money, and a lot of them are nearing retirement or have a choice of being retired or not. They've had a fantastic stock market ride, really big 401k benefits. And when even before COVID was happening, you had a big surge of baby boomers retiring, leaving work from wherever they were and figuring it out somehow. working part-time at a hardware store or whatever. So that's the bad news. That's the bad news for corporate America, because you had sort of this brain drain of people leaving. The good news is, if you were a younger person, it opened up maybe some job opportunities to go in there and fill those spots. But it's changed labor quite a bit because younger people saw that they had an advantage and they've been demanding more benefits. Like I said, working from home, right? More flexibility with working. So let's see. I want to talk about the role of education with labor. So here we are in class getting some type of degree. Labor, a big reason a lot of folks go to get a college degree is get better jobs. And that has been a pretty good routine in the past. All the statistics show last 30, 40 years, the more educated you were, the better jobs you got, the longer you live. There's a whole bunch of checks. Doesn't mean you're smarter, doesn't mean you're a better person. Just kind of fell into it that if you got educated, you had more choices, for example. So now, what comes about now is things like AI. So you have a bachelor's degree, you're about to get a bachelor's, you're about to get a master's, and this thing that you keep hearing about every 15 minutes called AI is coming along, and you're reading that perhaps you won't have a very good job because AI is going to take over that position, right? So now what are you going to do? So it pushes college students to consider the future a little bit more. Way back in the 80s, when I was in college, we didn't have to take any computer classes. We were computer novices. We weren't required to do anything. So that was in 1987. And I don't even know what to tell you about what happened in the 90s. Every desk had a PC on it very quickly. The internet started hitting in 1991, 92, 93. And I wouldn't say I wasn't prepared, but I didn't have any college training on it, so I had to work a little harder. Well, what's going to be different there with AI? Are all of you college students and college students around the world going to be able to learn AI so you can get that? Can you get that good job? Do you have the right education? Is another example. Let's see. That's about what I want to talk about the content this week. You'll see a quiz posted Tuesday, Wednesday, probably. You'll get a good 5, 6, 7 days. Everyone seems to be doing pretty well on those. It'll be on 2 chapters. It will be on the previous 2 chapters we covered, and like I say, same look. 10 questions, multiple choices. And again, I encourage everybody to let me know if you're having any issues. Make sure you're keeping up with the work. I think we're doing our last conversation this week. It looks like some people already started discussion 4. This is week 7. So next week we wrap everything up. So I'm glad for everyone's hard work, and keep working hard. Make sure we finish strong, and maybe I'll check in with everyone during the middle of the week. So hope everyone had a good Thanksgiving, by the way. And before we know it, the holiday is going to be coming along, and we're going to have this class under our belt. So keep working hard.